heavy over the city, and sheets of rain fell with relentless force. Traffic slowed to a crawl along the winding roads of Wuse 2 as pedestrians clutched makeshift umbrellas and scurried for cover. On the corner of a busy street, near an old tailor's shop, a woman stood barefoot. Her long, soaked wrapper clung to her like a second skin, and in her trembling arms, two tiny babies, barely a year old, pressed against her chest. The girl was named Amara Okoye. Only 25, but her tired eyes and worn face could pass for a woman 10 years older. Her braided hair was soaked, her skin pale from cold, and her arms were stiff from rocking the infants in a futile attempt to comfort them. They shivered silently, lips trembling, the cold far too cruel for their small frames. Occasionally, Amara stretched out a hand to passing cars. Few even noticed. Some gave her fleeting glances. Most didn't see her at all. She whispered to the babies with trembling lips, "Just hold on. We'll be okay." Inside a sleek black SUV, waiting in the slow traffic, a man sat quietly in the back seat. His name was Michael Chisom, 32, and already one of Abuja's most respected real estate billionaires. Known for his privacy and precision, Michael rarely let emotion drive his actions. But something outside caught his eye. Through the foggy window and rainfall, he saw her, wet, still, broken, but familiar. He leaned forward. A memory flickered. A night. A whisper. A name. "Stop the car," he ordered sharply. The driver hesitated. "Sir?" "I said stop." As the car slowed near the curb, Michael pressed his palm to the window. It was her, Amara, the quiet young cook who had disappeared from his Asokoro mansion without a trace 2 years ago. Back then, he hadn't thought much of her absence. House staff came and went, but now, seeing her there, with babies, something clenched in his chest. He stepped out into the rain, the downpour soaking his shirt instantly, but he didn't care. Cars splashed past him as he crossed the street slowly, eyes fixed on her. "Amara?" he called softly. She looked up, eyes met. For a moment, the world fell silent, just rain and recognition. She knew him instantly, her employer, the man she once watched from a distance, the man whose grief had collided with her compassion one unforgettable night. But her arms tightened around the babies. "I don't need your pity," she said, voice hard but trembling. "I didn't ask you for anything." Michael stood frozen, drenched, confused. "I didn't mean—" A sharp, wheezing cough interrupted him. One of the babies, the girl, gasped with effort. Michael's face changed. "Let me help." Amara hesitated. She looked down at her daughter, then her son, both shivering. Her eyes betrayed her fear, her helplessness. She gave the faintest nod. "Just for the babies, not me." Michael nodded solemnly. Understood. He signaled the driver. Soft towels were retrieved. Carefully, they wrapped the children, hands shaking but steady. As they slid into the warmth of the SUV, Amara clutched the twins close, silent. Michael turned to the driver and said just one thing. "Zuma Crest Hospital, now." The SUV moved swiftly through Abuja's rain-slicked streets, heading toward Zuma Crest Hospital. Inside, the tension was thick, unspoken but heavy. Michael sat on one side, his eyes occasionally flicking to the mirror to check on Amara and the babies. She sat stiffly, holding the twins close, her lips pressed into a firm line. The hospital lobby was quiet, sterile, and far removed from the chaos of the world outside. A wave of warmth and calm met them as they stepped inside. Michael led the way, speaking briefly to the receptionist. Moments later, Dr. Yusuf Danjuma, a trusted pediatrician and longtime friend of Michael's, emerged down the hallway. His smile faded quickly when he saw the soaked woman holding two fragile babies. "Michael," he said quietly, "this way." In a private room, Amara sat on the bench, her soaked wrapper dripping on the tiled floor. She didn't speak as nurses gently took the twins and laid them under warm lamps. Dr. Chisom moved swiftly, checking vitals, murmuring instructions to the nurses. Michael stood in a corner, arms folded, watching silently. Amara's eyes never moved from the babies. Her hands were clenched tightly in her lap. She looked calm, but inside, a storm raged. This wasn't how she imagined seeing Michael again. Not barefoot, not broken, not like this. "Amara," he said gently. She didn't turn. "I didn't mean to offend you earlier. I was just surprised. I didn't expect to see you again." Silence. He took a step forward. "You worked in my home for years. You were kind, quiet. But why did you disappear? Without a word?" She looked at him then, slowly, like the weight of his voice was dragging her gaze. Her eyes were tired, but piercing. "You don't even remember, do you?" Michael blinked. Of course I do. You were the cook. You lived in the quarter. You were staff," she cut in with a bitter smile. "Nothing more." "I didn't mean it like that," he said quickly. A cough from one of the babies interrupted them. Michael looked toward the crib, concern rising again. He glanced back at her. "Please, if something happened, tell me." She turned away, facing the window where raindrops raced each other down the glass. "I gave you something that night," she whispered. "Something I never gave anyone. And you forgot. The next day, I was gone. Just another girl from the boys' quarters." Michael's memory flinched. Flashes of a night blurred by grief and too much whiskey. His father's funeral. A long day. A silent corridor. A warm presence. A kiss. He opened his mouth, but no words came. Just then, Dr. Chisom re-entered with a large white envelope. His face was calm, professional, but unreadable. "The babies are stable," he said. "The girl has a mild chest infection, but she'll recover quickly with antibiotics." Michael exhaled in relief. Chisom looked at him, then at Amara, then back to Michael. He handed over the envelope. "You also asked me to run a DNA test." Michael's heartbeat quickened. "They're yours, Michael. 100% match." The words slammed into him like thunder. He sat down slowly, staring at the document in his hand. His children. All this time, they were his. He looked up at Amara. She didn't gloat, didn't smirk. She just held her silence like a shield. He whispered, "Why didn't you tell me?" Her voice cracked. "Because you had moved on, and I had nothing but shame." Michael didn't respond. He couldn't. His world had just cracked open. In a single rainy night, the girl he once overlooked had returned, not just with memories, but with his family. The rain had slowed by the time the SUV returned to Asokoro Estate, but inside the vehicle, the atmosphere was still heavy with silence. Michael sat at the wheel this time, unusually quiet. Beside him, Amara cradled the twins, now warm and sleeping. She had changed into hospital-provided clothing, simple and clean, but foreign on her. The soaked wrapper was gone, but the exhaustion in her eyes remained. As they approached the black iron gates of the mansion, Amara's breath caught. She hadn't seen this place in 2 years. This was once her world, the boys' quarters behind the rose garden, the narrow staircases she used to sweep, the kitchen where she brewed his tea every morning, memorizing the exact way he liked it. No sugar, extra ginger. Now she was returning, not as a cook, but as the mother of his children. The gates opened with their usual slow grace, and the mansion loomed ahead, glowing softly in the dusk. House staff peered out curiously. Michael gave firm instructions as he parked. "Prepare the guest suite upstairs. 2 baby cots, warm towels, formula, and get someone to bring a clean change of clothes." "Yes, sir." One maid approached carefully, offering to take one of the twins. Amara hesitated, then handed over baby Emmanuel while she carried Emanuela inside herself. Her steps were slow, deliberate. Everything about this felt surreal. Michael watched her walk ahead and felt a quiet pang. He hadn't realized how much of her he remembered. Her walk, her grace, the way she used to lower her eyes when passing him. He hadn't realized how much he had forgotten either, what she meant. Inside the mansion, everything looked pristine. The same marble floors, the chandelier, the scent of lavender cleaning polish. But Amara, she was a different woman now. She didn't speak as she settled the babies in the warm guest suite. Michael brought her new clothes and stood awkwardly at the doorway. "You can rest here tonight," he said quietly. "I've asked my lawyer to start custody paperwork tomorrow. I want to be in their lives. Fully." Amara took the clothes with a soft nod. "Thank you." She said nothing else, just closed the door gently behind her. Downstairs, Michael poured himself a drink and stared out at the rain-slick garden. He barely recognized his own emotions: relief, guilt, awe, something else too, something deeper, something unfinished. Later that night, he joined her for dinner at the long mahogany table. The twins lay nearby in a bassinet, gurgling softly. Michael hadn't touched his food. "I should tell you," he said at last, "I'm engaged." Amara didn't flinch. She simply lifted another spoon of mashed yam to Emanuela's mouth. "That's fine," she replied. "I'm not here to interfere." Michael sighed. "Still, I'm going to find a house for you and the twins. Something comfortable, safe." Amara met his gaze for the first time in hours. "Don't do this out of pity, Michael. I've survived worse. I don't need saving." His voice softened. "It's not pity, it's regret. And maybe something else. Something I can't quite name yet." She looked down. Her fingers brushed Emmanuel's hair. Neither of them said another word, but something unspoken hovered between them. That night, as the mansion quieted into sleep, Michael stood in his study. "I want joint custody," he told his lawyer over the phone. "Make it airtight. I won't lose them, not again." Upstairs, Amara watched her children sleep, curled in warmth she could never have imagined weeks ago. Her fingers ran lightly over their cheeks, then tightened into a fist. She wasn't here to stay. She was just passing through, just making sure her babies had a chance. She'd already lost too much to dream about anything more. Amara was up before the sun, already bathing the twins and laying out their tiny clothes. Though she was grateful for the safety of the mansion, she moved quietly, deliberately, like someone who didn't intend to stay long. Downstairs, Michael stood in his home office, staring at his phone. He knew he couldn't delay the conversation any longer. He typed a message. "Kendra, can we talk? Please come to the house today." The reply came almost immediately. "Of course, babe, on my way." By noon, Kendra Ose stepped out of her wine-red SUV, designer heels tapping crisply across the marble driveway. She wore elegance like armor, flawless makeup, silk dress, a confident smile. She greeted Michael with a kiss on the cheek and swept into the sitting room like she already belonged there. "So, who's the guest?" she asked casually, adjusting her bracelet. Michael gestured toward the far end of the room. Amara stood quietly, holding Emanuela, while Emmanuel gurgled in a bassinet nearby. "Kendra," Michael said gently, "this is Amara. And these are my children." Kendra blinked once. Smile frozen. Silence. Amara gave a polite nod. "Nice to meet you." Michael continued. "They're mine. I only found out recently. Amara will be staying here for a short time until I sort out a permanent arrangement. I'm taking joint custody." Kendra's smile returned. Strained. Too polished. "Oh, how precious," she said, voice sweet but sharp around the edges. "Twins, from the past." Amara said nothing, but she noticed the ice behind the words. Kendra turned to Michael. "May I speak to you privately?" He nodded. They stepped into the hallway. "What is this, Michael?" she hissed. "Playing house with a cook from the boys' quarters? You think this won't make headlines?" "I'm not playing anything," Michael said, jaw tight. "Those children are mine. I'm taking responsibility." Kendra folded her arms. "So where does that leave us?" Michael didn't answer. The days that followed unfolded quietly, but tension simmered beneath the surface. Michael was present in the nursery more often than in his boardroom. He fed the twins, changed them, even laughed when Emmanuel drooled on his shirt. Amara watched him, always from a distance. She couldn't afford to hope. But Kendra noticed everything. She noticed the softness in Michael's eyes when Amara walked into a room, the quiet smiles he shared with her over the twins' milestones, the way he seemed more alive now than he had ever been with her. And that terrified her. One night, as Michael searched an old drawer for some business documents, his hand brushed something familiar. A silver necklace with a delicate blue stone pendant. His breath caught. He had given it to Amara 4 years ago, after a business trip abroad. She had worn it that night. The night everything changed. The night he forgot, but never really did. Why was it still here? Why hadn't she taken it with her? Or had someone hidden it? He closed the drawer slowly, heart pounding. The answers were starting to rise, quiet, undeniable. Meanwhile, Kendra made her own call, her voice low, urgent, bitter. "I need your help," she whispered into her private line. "He's slipping away, and it's because of her." On the other end, a voice chuckled darkly. "Still chasing shadows, Kendra?" It was Tobechukwu Toby Chisom, Michael's estranged stepbrother, the same man cut off from the Chisom family fortune after a bitter scandal. Kendra's eyes narrowed. "I want her and the babies gone, and I know you want your seat back, so let's help each other." Toby paused, then said with a slow, wicked smile, "Now that's the Kendra I remember." A storm rolled across Abuja, fierce and relentless, shaking windows and rattling palm trees. Inside the mansion, the twins were asleep. Emmanuel curled into a soft pillow, and Emanuela breathing softly beside her mother in the guest room. Michael was away at a late-night business briefing. Amara, exhausted, sat in the quiet room. A part of her felt peace for the first time in a long while. But beneath that fragile calm, a familiar fear stirred. Nothing in her life had ever stayed good for too long. A gentle knock broke the silence. She opened the door to see Kendra holding a tray. "I brought you something," Kendra said with a soft smile. "Chamomile tea. Helps with sleep. I thought, maybe we should start over." Amara hesitated. The rain boomed in the distance. Kendra's voice was calm, sincere even. "Thank you," Amara said, taking the tray. "No pressure," Kendra continued. "I just want you to feel safe here, for the twins' sake." Amara gave a tired nod. "That means a lot." She took a sip. The warmth slid down her throat. It was sweet, calming, soothing. Her eyelids grew heavy almost immediately. She barely made it to the chair before the teacup fell from her hand and shattered on the tiled floor. And then, blackness. Midnight. 2 men in black masks entered silently through the rear entrance. They moved swiftly and without sound. They stepped into the nursery, scooped the babies from their cots, and disappeared through the back garden where a van waited in the shadows. No one heard them, except the storm. 3:47 a.m. Amara jolted awake on the floor, her head pounding, vision spinning. She tried to stand but collapsed against the wall. Then she remembered. The babies. She scrambled into the nursery, breath caught in her throat. Empty. Cribs unmade, blankets gone. "No, no, no, no!" Her scream echoed through the mansion. Moments later, Michael burst into the hallway, phone in hand. He had just returned. One look at Amara's face, and he knew. "They're gone," she cried. Someone took them. Michael froze. His entire body went cold. Then he ran to the nursery, empty, clean, quiet, too quiet. He spun, already dialing. Lock down the house, check every camera. Get security here, now. Then his phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. If you want your babies back, a distorted voice said, do not involve the police. We'll be in touch. The call ended. Michael stared at the screen. His heart was thundering louder than the storm outside. Then a second call. This time, a familiar voice slithered through the speaker. Well, well, brother, said Chisom calmly. Still think you can erase me? Michael's jaw tightened. Tobe, if you touch them... I want what should have always been mine, Tobe snapped. Sign over your controlling shares in Chisom Properties, and you'll get your children back. Refuse, and I'll bury your legacy with them. The line went dead. Michael stood frozen in the hallway. Then he turned slowly to Amara, whose eyes were wide with silent terror. They took them, she whispered. Because of me. No, he said, voice trembling. Because of me. And I swear on everything, I'm going to bring them back. He turned to his security chief. Get the team ready. We're going to war. The next morning, a thick fog clung to the edges of Abuja's industrial outskirts, where forgotten buildings sat like ghosts of a city once alive. Hidden deep inside Kabwa Industrial Yard, a cold, leaking warehouse hummed with danger. Toby Chisom paced the dusty floor, a smug grin plastered across his face. The twins were placed in a makeshift crib under harsh overhead lights. Baby Emmanuel cried weakly. Emanuela whimpered, her thumb in her mouth. Tobe hissed in irritation. Shut them up! Beside him, a trembling driver stood near a rusted van, eyes darting. Boss, are you sure this is still the plan? Tobe turned, furious. You question me now? Outside, rain began to fall again, softly at first, then harder, almost as if the sky itself was building tension. At the Chisom estate, Michael moved with terrifying calm. His head of security, Captain Ike, had already swept the mansion and decrypted the caller's location using triangulated cell tower data. They found it, an abandoned warehouse west of Kubwa. Team Alpha will breach the rear, Captain Ike said. Team Bravo flanks. We go in silent. Minimal noise. No civilian damage. Michael nodded. He pulled on a dark coat, eyes heavy with fire. This is my family, he said. I go in first. Meanwhile, Amara sat in the SUV behind the estate gates, refusing to stay behind. She clutched the silver necklace Michael had returned to her, whispering prayers beneath her breath. Her heart was raw, her voice hoarse from crying, but her will unshaken. 11:02 a.m. A single SUV rolled up the cracked dirt path to the warehouse entrance. Michael stepped out alone, hands open. He walked straight into the lion's den. Tobe grinned. You really came. Brave or stupid? I came for my children, Michael said coldly. Let me see them. Tobe gestured, and the crib was rolled into view. Michael's breath hitched. His babies, alive, scared, but breathing. Now, Toby said, waving a folder, sign over your controlling shares, everything, and walk away. Or say goodbye. From Michael's earpiece, a whisper. On your mark. He gave the faintest nod. Now. In a flash, the warehouse exploded into chaos. Security agents in tactical black flooded the building from every angle. Flashlights cut through the shadows. Shouts rang out. Toby grabbed Emmanuel in panic and bolted for the loading door. Michael chased him without hesitation, rage burning in his blood. They collided near the back entrance, the baby crying between them. Michael tackled him to the ground, shielding the infant with his arms. Toby, he roared. Oh, you're finished. Officers swarmed, pinning Tobe down. The twins were recovered, crying, cold, but safe. Michael held both children against his chest, his body shaking with relief. And just then, Amara burst into the warehouse. She froze at the sight, Michael on his knees, the twins in his arms, dust and light pouring in from the broken roof above. She ran. He stood just in time to catch her. "I thought I lost them," she sobbed, clinging to them all. "You won't," Michael whispered, burying his face in her shoulder. "Not ever again." Outside, the storm had stopped. The air was still damp, but calm. For the first time in days, it felt like hope. The skies over Abuja cleared as the police van carrying Toby Chisom disappeared into the horizon. But inside the Chisom mansion, a heavier storm brewed, one made of silence, truth, and decades of buried pain. Michael sat alone in his study that evening, the twins finally asleep upstairs. He had reviewed the warehouse footage, but something still didn't sit right. How did Toby know when to strike? Who knew Amara was in the mansion? Who had access to the guest room? His tech team didn't disappoint. By morning, he had everything. Security footage showed Kendra sneaking into the guest suite the night of the kidnapping. A small vial, a second phone, text messages to an unknown number, later traced to Toby. One voice recording stood out like a wound. "Make sure it's done quietly, just enough to scare her. Once they're gone, he'll come back to me." Michael stood frozen. He had heard many lies in his life, but this one tore straight through him. That evening, Kendra arrived at the mansion, her heels tapping against the floor like nothing had happened. Her smile was as perfect as ever. "You wanted to see me?" she asked sweetly. Michael didn't smile. He handed her a tablet. She listened. Her face cracked. First denial, then silence, then fury. "You're going to ruin me over her?" she snapped. "You barely even looked at her when she worked here." "I didn't see her then," Michael said coldly. "But I see her now, and I see who you really are." Before Kendra could speak again, two officers entered the room. Michael nodded. "You know the way out." As they escorted her away, Kendra glanced back at the mansion one last time. Her eyes, no longer charming, were hollow. She had lost. Upstairs, Amara sat by the window, arms around her knees, the twins asleep beside her. She had overheard nothing. She didn't ask what happened. But when Michael entered and quietly folded the betrayal documents into a drawer, she knew. He had chosen. And it wasn't out of guilt. Days passed. Healing came in fragments, warm baths for the twins, whispered lullabies at midnight, shared glances over tea. Mama Nkechi, Michael's mother, was expected to return from London any day now. Michael hadn't told her anything yet. Not about the twins, not about Amara. Then one afternoon, the gate buzzed. She arrived, regal as ever, pearl earrings gleaming, her scarf tied with the precision of someone who had lived in both the palace and the pulpit. Amara stood in the living room with Emanuela on her hip. Mama Nkechi entered, pausing when she saw the children. And then her eyes locked on Amara. The blood drained from her face. Michael stepped forward. "They're mine, Mama. These are my children, and this is Amara, their mother." His mother staggered to the nearest sofa. "I told her to disappear," she whispered, shaking. 2 years ago, I caught her in your study with a letter in her hand. I knew what had happened. I saw it in her eyes." She looked up, tears rising. "I told her to leave, that she could never belong here. I threatened her, told her to get rid of the baby, that she was a stain on our name." Michael's fists clenched at his side. Amara's breath caught. Her arms tightened around Emanuela. "I ruined her," Mama Nkechi said, eyes wet. "I ruined everything. I thought I was protecting you, but I was just protecting my pride." She turned to Amara, her voice breaking. "I don't deserve forgiveness, but for the sake of those babies, and the son I wronged, I beg you." The room was still. Then slowly, Amara stepped forward. Her hands trembled as she reached for Mama Nkechi's hand. "I forgive you," she whispered. And with that, two women who had been broken by the same man, the same world, the same pride, held each other and wept. Michael stood by the window, his hand covering his mouth. He had almost lost them all. But now he had a choice to make. And this time he would not choose wrong. Now Asakoro Estate basked in warm golden sunlight that filtered through the garden trees. In the courtyard, Emmanuel and Emanuela toddled across a picnic blanket, squealing in delight at bubbles floating above them. Their laughter filled the air like birdsong. Michael and Amara sat nearby, on a low garden bench, watching the twins play. No words were spoken for a while. There was peace in the silence, a kind of knowing. Then, quietly, Michael reached into his pocket. He held something delicate in his hand, the silver necklace with the blue stone, the one she'd left behind 2 years ago, the one he had tucked away, thinking it was forgotten. Amara looked down at it, then up at him. Her breath caught. "I kept it," he said softly, "because it reminded me of the one moment in my life I wish I had done differently." He stood. Then slowly he lowered himself to one knee. "I'm not asking for perfection," he said. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for forever. With you, with them, with us. Will you marry me, Amara?" Tears rushed to her eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Michael, yes." He slipped the necklace around her neck. She cupped his cheek and kissed him, gently, fully, without fear. This time there was no storm to interrupt them. Just sunlight and soft wind, and the laughter of two children who had no idea what their parents had survived to be here. That evening, as the mansion glowed under warm lights, Amara stood on the balcony, the breeze playing with the hem of her soft cotton dress. Michael joined her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "I want to tell you something," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He nodded. "I admired you long before that night. I would watch you when I brought tea to your study. I kept every small gift you gave the staff, but I held mine like treasure. That night, it wasn't a mistake. I gave you something sacred, not because I felt sorry for you, but because I had already loved you, silently, completely." Michael's chest rose and fell. "I remember now," he said, his voice full. "I remember how you looked at me when no one else did." He turned her gently to face him, "And I will never forget again." They kissed, soft, slow, full of promises that didn't need to be spoken. A week later, the house stirred with quiet joy. Wedding plans were simple. No tabloids, no gold-dripping venues. Just family, just heart. And impact. Together, they unveiled the Amara Hope Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to supporting abandoned mothers and displaced children across Nigeria. The press gathered in a modest garden setting, not for glitz, but for something better, a story of redemption, truth, and restoration. Michael stood behind the podium, with Amara by his side. "She didn't ask for anything," he told the crowd. "She gave me everything. And this foundation is our way of giving back to those the world tries to forget." The crowd rose to its feet. Mama Nkechi clapped from the front row, her eyes wet with pride. Captain Ike and Dr. Yusuf stood nearby, nodding quietly. The sun shone bright that day. But what glowed most was Amara's face, strong, serene, healed. The scent of hibiscus floated through the air, blending with the distant laughter of children in the garden. Amara sat on the front porch of the Chisom estate, a thick university textbook in her lap and a pair of reading glasses slipping gently down her nose. Beside her, a tote bag filled with fresh notebooks, pencils, and a student ID from Bayes University. She was starting her degree in social work next week. Michael walked out with 2 steaming cups of tea. He placed one gently beside her and sat down, his hand brushing hers. They sat together in silence, watching as Emmanuel and Emanuela, now walking and talking in clumsy toddler language, chased butterflies across the lawn. Remember when I didn't even know they existed? Michael murmured. Amara smiled, her eyes soft with memory. Now they own you. Michael chuckled. Gladly. They looked at each other. Two people who had once been strangers in the same house. Now partners, lovers, co-founders of a foundation, and most importantly, a family. The garden buzzed with peace. Mama Nkechi was inside, baking plantain muffins with the twins, flour smudging her scarf as she hummed old Igbo gospel songs. The mansion no longer felt like a fortress of power. It felt like a home. A home built not on wealth, but on forgiveness. Not on image, but on truth. Amara turned to Michael, her voice low but certain. You know, if you love someone, don't wait for the rain. Michael raised an eyebrow. She looked out at the twins again. Find them now! He reached for her hand, pulled it gently to his chest, and kissed her palm. I already did, he said. And beneath the soft Abuja sun, their hearts beat steady, their wounds had healed, their storm had passed. And from that rain, something stronger had bloomed. Love. That didn't forget. That didn't run. That stayed.